Hey everyone, welcome to Module 5, and we are moving right along and moving up the pyramid, right? So we have covered, in terms of our assignments, the discussion board. You guys are doing great. The reflection papers, those are, as I'm recording this, coming in and looking good as well. Not every reflection paper will be about a case study. We're going to be doing a number of different topics, but those are really that time for you to provide me with a little bit of information about where you think you are, in terms of the semester and your comprehension of the materials that we're going over. So the next things kind of to look forward to, or looking forward, the things that should be on your radar. I don't know if everybody looks forward to baseline videos, but of course, a couple more discussion posts, another reflection paper, and your first baseline video is due by the 7th of October, which I think really will come quicker than any of us are anticipating, I'm sure. So you want to start right now kind of thinking about who you might be doing a role play with. I always like to point out in my lectures, in addition to putting it in the assignment, baseline videos are with adults, so nobody under the age of 18. They should not be a member of your household. For a number of different reasons, obviously. However, in this age of COVID, I know that things could change on a dime, and if for some reason you have to be using somebody in your household, so if you are quarantined or if there's a stay-at-home order that comes out last minute, then those are going to be some exceptions to that rule that I have, that it cannot be a member of your household. Let me know if that's the case. Give me a heads up, and I would be more than happy to work with you. If not, I expect that it's somebody outside of your household. You can do these baseline videos over Zoom if you would like, if you prefer. There's a way that you can, pin both you and the individual that you're role playing with to the video, and so that I'm able to see both of you during that time, and that's what I would like to have happen if you're doing it through Zoom. If you're just recording on your phone, there's no magical way necessarily to upload an eCampus. eCampus likes to make things difficult for us. If you have not already figured that out, that is the case with eCampus. If you just generally record like an MP4, it's going to be too big for you to upload into the Dropbox for those baseline videos. So you'll want to convert it. You can either put it on a Google Doc, make sure that I'm provided access to those, or if you're putting it on YouTube and it's password protected or a private video, that I have access to that as well. Without doubt, I'll have emails Thursday saying I can't upload my video, I'm not sure what to do. The last thing I want you to do is send it to me via email. Then it becomes my problem to put it up in the assignment area. So these videos have to be on eCampus so that there's a record of it, but there are ways to do that. So that's my little spiel about things coming up in the future. Again, I think October will be here pretty quickly. I just bit the bullet today and had my first pumpkin spice latte, so fall is in the air to me, but be thinking about those first baseline videos. So for this module, I do have to admit there's a good bit of content. We're covering chapters 5 and 6, and so we're looking at questioning, probing, summarizing and paraphrasing as all part of our responsibility and tools that we're using when we're meeting with clients during our counseling sessions. So there are some materials that I have that are supplemental materials, some specific. What I like to do with this module in particular is give you examples of what these things look like, because sometimes we may not have familiarity with what a probing question actually is, or what that means, or what open-ended questions might look like, because it's more natural for us to, if we're listening to friends or family or whoever, strangers in a grocery line, it can be more just natural for us to ask kind of those closed-ended questions. That's a very natural thing to do. Closed-ended questions being those questions that could be answered with a definitive yes or no. And they don't really get us anywhere. So, you could test it out. Ask closed-ended questions, and that's the only thing that you're asking to somebody, and you're just going to kind of go in a loop. You're not going to get any new information from that person that you're speaking to. So we're going to start getting in the practice of using open-ended questions, the whats, the wheres, the hows, the whys, of questioning during those counseling sessions. So I've got some specific examples of what those questions might look like, clarifying questions, probing questions. It's really important for us whenever we're working with a client to make sure that we are letting them know that we are obviously listening, right? And we're doing that by providing these paraphrases. Paraphrases happen naturally throughout the entire session that you're counseling with another person or persons if you're doing couples counseling, for example. But so those questions, those paraphrases, that's just a tiny little tiny little summarizations of things that are being said by your client, and then following those up with some type of probing question or clarification. Clarification being, once you're reflecting, you're providing some reflection of what your client is saying, checking back in with them. Am I hearing this correctly? Did I get that right? Is there anything else that you want to add? Well, I shouldn't say that. That's a close-ended question, because then there's yes or no. You could say, what else is there to add? Or what else would you like to tell me about this situation? Summarizations are longer. They come after longer periods of time in those counseling sessions. And oftentimes when you're starting out as a new counselor, you wonder, how in the world do I even start a counseling session, right? And in those baseline videos that you have, it's going to be a little bit awkward because you are going into those baseline videos as if it is your first session, right? So during the baseline video, you're going to be, starting out by covering confidentiality, informed consent, disclosure, use of technology. If you're using technology, you're kind of having that business talk with that client and doing more of an intake with your client during that baseline video time. When you get to your next theories and techniques class, 606, you're going to be ideally using the same client for a series of videos because we don't have the immersion week in 606, you do more videos. So during that period of time, when you get to that second, third, fourth, final session with a client, using summarizations can be a fantastic way to open up the conversation. In the slides that I posted from Ivy, you'll see that there's an example of a client that comes in to a session and just immediately starts talking about, what's going on with them and, a million miles a minute kind of thing. And clients will do that. They'll hit you immediately with, a ton of information and little room for you to interrupt or interject while they're describing to you what the latest problem is. Other times that's not the case. Your client will sit down and the expectation is that you're there to prompt and start that conversation. Providing a summarization of what happened at the last session can be a fantastic way to start out the new session. And so you can start out a session by saying, all right, Jane, if I'm recalling correctly from our last session, we covered yada, yada, yada. And at the end of the session, we decided that there were going to be some things that we're going to work on in the past week. And if I'm remembering correctly, those things were A, B, and C. So why don't you provide me with an update? Were you able to do A, B, and C? Or what has progressed since we last spoke? So you're taking those first couple of minutes to really get yourself set in the space and get yourself set in the mindset of working with that particular client. You are engaging with them and letting them know that you remember who they are, you remember what the situation was, and then you're letting them know that you remember that you assigned them some task to do, or that there was an expectation that they would be practicing some new skill or working on something in the interim between the last time you met and the time you met now. So those summarizations can be a fantastic way to open up a conversation, to open up a new session with a client. They can also and should also be used at the end of every session. So when you notice that you have a couple minutes left in a session, you're always going to be kind of watching a clock, right? That's just, a hazard of the job. You're going to be watching a clock. So when you're noticing that the time is dwindling down, if there hasn't been like a natural kind of ending to the session that you're having, which happens, then you're using those last couple of minutes to recap things that were discussed during that session. You are taking that time to go over more concisely, what was discussed, what action items are going to be the focus between now and the next session, making sure to asking those clarifying questions. Is there anything that we missed? Is there anything, or what other things would you like to add before we close out this session today? being able to kind of leave the client in a good space, knowing that when they leave your office or whatever it might look like, your virtual office, that they're going out there and they know what they're supposed to be working on, and you know what specific items are going to be important for you to document as part of your case notes. So summarization, paraphrasing, very important aspects of the counseling session as a whole. Questions, of course, are very important aspects. One thing that I often notice with new counselors is rapid fire questions. And so when you're doing those baseline videos and you're starting to practice, I think a good kind of cadence to get in is when you are talking with your role play partner, asking 2 follow-up questions and then providing a paraphrase or a reflection of feelings, of emotions. So limiting yourself even to 1 question, right? And whenever you're asking questions of your client, you don't want to ask 2, 3, 4, 5 questions all back to back all at once. It's overwhelming for that client, right? It's overwhelming for the person that you're role playing. If you ask, make sure to just be asking 1, maybe 2 singular questions with a purpose, meaning that you are asking to gain more information about the situation. You're not just asking a question. Let's say that somebody is coming to you with issues in their marriage, and then you all of a sudden are asking questions that focus on that person's significant other, whenever the person is there to talk about themselves and their feelings and their needs and their wants that aren't getting met. So making sure that questions are focused on the right topic. And we understand that our questions are focused on the right topic by asking clarifying questions, asking our clients, are we getting this right? Is this the topic that you want to be talking about? Is this what you came here to talk about? So we're making sure that we're checking in with the client throughout, which lets them know that we are being attentive and that we are processing the information that they're dumping onto us, essentially. So those are the most important things that I really wanted to pinpoint about these main topics that we are covering within chapters 5 and 6. I'm going to scan through my PowerPoints really quickly here, just to make sure that I'm not missing anything. In my PowerPoints, like I said, I really like to give you all some concrete examples of what these questions sound like. So make notes, take notes. When you're getting ready to prepare for that baseline video and the role plays that we're going to be doing during the immersion week, take notes of what these questions might look like. Refer to them. Start getting in the habit of asking questions in a certain way. What would you like to talk about today? What's been going on since the last time we met? How have you been working towards that goal that we talked about at the very first session? And within my chapter 5 slides, I also have, if you'll notice the headings for them, some of these questions are specific to the type of theoretical orientation that you might be considering. So there are different ways to use different tools under different theories, okay? And we will get into this more in depth, especially in 606. But when we're talking about using cognitive behavioral therapy versus solution focus versus reality therapy or RUBT or Gestalt even, we're all getting to the same goal with a client, right? We want to see improvement and progress, but there's different little things that we do, different ways that we ask questions, different areas that we focus on. And so you'll see within these slides, 8, 9, 10, and I think 11, 12, yep, different ways to ask questions depending on the type of theory that a counselor might be using. So that's just an important thing to note, and start to think about which ones and which way of asking questions resonates with you a little bit, which feels more comfortable, which feels more natural if you're practicing them. I'm not asking you during this semester at all to pick a specific theoretical orientation that you feel like you're going to go out and practice with whenever you get to practicum and internship. What I'm asking you to do is start recognizing what feels comfortable and what doesn't. And then within doing that, when you start to practice some of these things, you'll start figuring out which theories, especially in the next theory and techniques class, which theories you might be gravitating towards. It's unnatural to force something. And there's lots of different nuances with each theory. All right, so with that, I'm going to leave you all to it. There's a couple of videos within this module. They're relatively short. Hopefully that you find them useful. And then, of course, we have a discussion for this week. I really just want you to kind of think about how you've been influenced throughout your life in terms of listening, what that's looked like to you and in your family unit, in your community, depending on your background, whatever it might be. We're talking about communication, listening, questioning, what that looks like in general. And then I've been meaning to do this with all of the discussions, but it just has completely slipped my mind, but I'm going to start doing it now. When you have questions for me, feel free to ask them in these discussion boards. So if there's something that you want to learn more about or need to know more about, feel free to be posing those questions directly to me in those discussions. That's what they're there for. So if anybody has any questions, let me know. And if not, I'll let you all finish up with the rest of the module.